Okay, I had a request that the next time I wanted to try and reproduce this road to try and put it on video. So I'm going to attempt to do that today, and I don't know how it will turn out, if we'll be successful or not. But the aim of this whole project is to reproduce this road. Okay, what I did is I stamped out my design just on regular printer paper just to get the placement of the different stamps, and then I did a practice run on my cheapo laser glossy photo paper, and this was the result from that. So this time we're going to try it on the real thing on the chrome coat paper. These are the stamps that I used. Used these tree stamps. This was from the Nature Set 3. Used this stamp. This is from the Nature Set 13. Used this cabin stamp. This is from the Nature Set 16. Used the grass stamp. This one is from the Nature Set 10. And then from Art Impressions, we used these two grasses from the foliage set, the big flower set from the flower set 2, and the little flower set right here, and this is from the mini flower set. And so let's get started. This is the chrome coat paper. The first stamp I'm going to stamp up is the cabin stamp. So I'm just inking it up with Memento Black. And I'm going to stamp it in the upper right corner so that the top of the stamp is pretty much even with the top of the paper. And give it good pressure to get a good imprint, and leave it on there for a little bit to give it a chance for the ink to be transferred to the paper. And voila! And I'm going to use my stamp chamois to clean off the stamp. Now next I'm going to stamp the road, but in order to get the placement right, I am going to use a stamp positioner. And so I'll move this one out of the way, and I'm going to ink up the road. Oops. Got some ink on my hands here. I'm going to rub it off. And then I'm going to stamp it on the acrylic plate of my stamp positioner. And I'm going to ink it up again. And how I want to position this road is so that it's just going to the left of our cabin here. So I'll get this positioned. And then we're going to stamp the road. And there we have it. And I will also clean off my stamp positioner. And I can put the big one away. Now the next one we're going to stamp is the fence. And we're going to use the little stamp positioner for it. Stamp it on the plate. Now, where I want it is to be so that the road is going to hit right between these two posts. So I'm going to ink up my stamp again. And then I'm going to use my finger to just rub off between these two posts right here. So I don't know if you can see where I'm doing this is just right there, so that I'm cleaning the ink off of this. I can use a black memento marker to touch up the posts, make them darker. And once I've got this positioned the way I want, stamp in the fence. And voila. And put my stamp positioner away. Okay, the next one I'm going to stamp up is my filler grass. And so we'll just stamp that in. To fill in at the side of the road here. Clean that stamp off. Okay, next we're going to ink up just the two little trees, not the big one. So I'm just going to put a piece of paper over the big one, so when I ink it up, I just ink up the little trees. And then where I'm going to stamp this is right behind the fence over on the left here. Now, the way it turned out, it's in front of the fence, but it's no problem. Okay, now I'm ready to start coloring in the sky. I'm going to use Stampin' Up! Soft Sky, which is the lightest one, Pool Party, Marina Mist, and Island Indigo. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes since I stamped, and now I'm going to start coloring in the sky. I've got my 4 blues from lightest to darkest, and I'm going to use my Tim Holtz blending brush. I've got one of these for each of the color groups, and I bought a set for Stampin' Up! Ink, and I keep them all in a container like this. And so we're going to start with the lightest color and just brush it on. And this is Soft Sky. And I want to leave a highlight between the trees here. And so as I brush on, I'm going to keep that in mind. So just, and I'm just doing a very light pressure on the brush. I'm going to go with my next darker color. And the next. And the darkest color. I'm going to concentrate on the corner and the edges on the darker color. Now I'm also going to put a little bit of the blue down in the grass region. Not a lot of blue, but just a little bit. And I'm not going to put it on the road. So I'm just going to put it on the grass region. And I'm not going to put it on very thick. Then I'm going to skip the mid-tone one and go to the third color and just make it a little bit darker where the shadows are. And to darken up the corners and the edges a bit. Then I'm going to put a little bit of the darkest one, I'm going to darken the sky just a little tiny bit more. Okay, I finished with the blue. Now I'm going to start with the green. Using Stampin' Up! Again, Lemon Lime Twist, Pear Pizzazz, and Garden Green. Okay, and I've got my pad set up again from light to dark. I have my green blending brush, and I'm going to do the same thing that we did on the sky. I'm going to start with the lightest color and just brush it in from the side. And you notice when I brush these in, I actually start out on the paper and then brush it in. Now on the green, I will overlap a little bit on this portion of the road, so that there will be a little bit of overlap. Next, darker color. And then the darkest color. I'm going to concentrate mostly on the edges and the corners with the darkest color. And then I'm going to come in and just kind of pounce the dark color where there would be some shadows like under the tree, by the side of the road. And then maybe pounce it close to where the grass is. And put a little bit more at the edge. And that should do it for the green. Okay, now I'm going to stamp that little twiggy tree stamp. Just stamp it here on the edge. And with the Memento Tuxedo Black again, and clean off my stamp. Now what I want to do is I want to color the trees, and I'm going to use some alcohol markers for that. And I use the Bianyo, which are some cheap alcohol markers that I got from Amazon. And the two colors that I'm using is BG51 and GY48. 48 is the lightest color one, and so what I'm going to do with this one is I am going to highlight the trees. And I'm just tapping. I'm not doing a motion, a brush motion. I'm just tapping it. I want to maintain the detail from the stamp, and so I'm just lightly tapping. And this is to give a slight green tint to the black stamped image. So I'm just tapping over all the different leaves. And that was again with number 48. Now I'm going to take the number 51. The color itself is too dark, and so I'm going to do a tip to tip. I'm using the bullet tip of these markers, and I'm just brushing some of the darker color on, and then I'm going to slightly darken the trunk of these trees. And I'm going to do the same for the rest of the trees in this image, and then when I'm finished, we'll come back. Okay, I've finished the trees in the back here. I wanted to come back and do this tree right here in the front. There's a tree you can hardly see. And so okay, do that one. Now I want to go in and make sure that all the shadow regions here behind the fence are darker. And so I'm going to go in with touching the lightest to the darkest, and I'm going to make sure that the area behind here is good and dark. I also want to darken these plants right here that are in the front. So I'm just going to swipe my alcohol marker in the direction that the foliage is going. And so I'm just darkening that. And then the little grasses also. And the grasses that are stamped in the background here, I also want to darken those a bit. So just where these are, I'm doing little teeny tiny swiping motions upwards like this. And just following the grass here where it's stamped darker, I'm highlighting with the lightest green. And I will occasionally touch to the darker green to make it just a tad bit darker. So all these little darker tonage, we want to darken a little bit. Now I also, where the road is starting here, I'm just kind of dotting along where the design is in the stamp. All these little dark dots here. I am darkening with my lightest green. And we're going to do the same over on this side. I'll make this grass here that's from the stamp of the fence. I'll make it a little darker, as well as this here. And then once again, I'm just kind of following the original stamp. Wherever it's darker, that's indicating where the shadows are. And so that's where I'm putting the green color. And I'm just doing it very lightly. And then I'll also start to put some shadow. See, we also need to get the grass on the other side of the fence here. And I want that to be a little darker. Once again, I'm not really rubbing the marker in, I'm just gently tapping it to get the color laid down. And when I want a darker green, I touch the lighter green to the darker green tip of the alcohol marker. And I want to also get a little bit of the lighter green in this middle area. Actually, I'm going to wait on that. Now we're ready to start on the road. Now I hope this is going to work a bit. I've got some blue grays here, and I've got 4 different values. These are the alcohol markers again, and it's BG1, BG3, BG5, and BG7. I'm going to take the darkest one, the BG7. I'm going to take the chisel tip, and I'm just going to go along the edge here. like this. I don't want to get too much of it over into the grass area. Then I'm going to take the next darkest one and I'm going to go a little bit on the other side, but not too far, because I don't want a really big glob on what is the grassy area. And then I'm going to take the BG3, the chisel tip, and I'm just going to kind of drag it down like this, just to get it really saturated. And I'm going to take the lightest one, and on these edges here, I'm going to kind of drag it, and then in the median also, to get some color put down, and then on the edges here. I want to really saturate it with the alcohol. And we might go back to the BG3 also and really saturate it. Now I got some cotton rounds from Dollar Tree. So I'm going to use one of these. I'm going to put some rubbing alcohol on it. And I am just going to now remove a lot of this ink that I just laid down. And I may even use a cotton swab, put some alcohol on it, and really go over the dark area that I put down. And also use my colorless blender. This is one of my Copic colorless blenders, and as you can see, I've kind of ruined this tip, and so I don't use this for regular Copic work anymore, but for this type of thing, this is the Copic colorless blender, and I'm just going to try and get this darkest one kind of smeared as much as I can. Take some more alcohol and rub it down. Then I'll take a dry one and just kind of buff it out. Now I want to take the BG3 again. This is the second lightest. And using the chisel tip, I'm just gonna pull it down. Get as much ink on here as I can. And a little bit along the edge, not too much. Now take a BG5 and just kind of streak it down the road. And then I'm going to take my colorless blender, or you could take a Q-tip with alcohol on it. and just kind of drag it down to get kind of that streaky appearance. And show you with a Q-tip with a little bit of alcohol on it. And we'll just kind of drag this down and blot it dry. And you can see here we're getting streaks, which is what we want. And take the lighter one and just kind of spread this. Okay, and while we let that road dry a little bit, we'll start working on the fence and the house. And so I'm going to start with a WG 0.5. It's the Banyo one again. And I'm going to use the bullet tip. Make sure it's clean. And then I'm just going to put down the top coat on the fence. Then I'm going to take 104, bullet tip again, and I'm going to color over the shadows on the fence. And these ones where the green has kind of gone into the posts, I go ahead and color that in with the 104. Okay, and that is the fence, and we're going to use the same colors on the house. So I'm going to put the WG 0.5 and just kind of put the base coat on the building. And I'm going to use the 104 to add the shadows. It'll be kind of shadowy beneath the eaves. And then along here. And then it will be really shadowy on this side of the building. And so, and then I'll also do the posts of the porch. Now the door I'm going to do in 94, and I'll color the top of it with the 94. Then I'm going to use my colorless blender, or you can use a Q-tip with alcohol on it, and just blend the color down. And for some reason that's not blending very well. So what I'll do is just kind of bring it down a little bit more. And that gives a slight red tinge to the door. Okay, now the roof, I am going to do in 33, 103, and 105. I meant 104, not 105. And so I'm going to start with the 103. And I'm just going to put a slight hint of it on the roofs. Then I'm going to take the 103 and the bullet tip and kind of bring it out a little bit more. And then I'm going to take the 104, kind of blend it a little more. Then I'm going to take my colorless blender and blend it all together. And then I'm going to do the sills and trim in 103. And so, using the bullet tip again, and that's just going to make the outlines of everything pop. And the bottom here too. Maybe a little bit on the posts and the edge here. Maybe put a little bit also on the fence. Not a whole lot, but especially back here. Okay. Now I think I'm going to put some of the WG-05 on the inside of these windows here, just to make those a little bit more colored. Okay, next we're going to take the little grass stamp, which is the art impression stamp. I'm going to use Garden Green Stampin' Up! Ink, and we are just going to go along the outside of the road. And to do this stamp, you don't want to stamp it like this, where you just have separate little stamps. You kind of walk it, and so you're going to walk it along so that it kind of looks more natural. And so we're going to define the edge of the road with this stamp. And also the inside. Where those darkest blue grays were. And also the middle. So we're just outlining the ruts in the road, basically. Okay, now we're going to take this little stamp and we're going to just highlight where the grass is in the original stamp, the Stampscapes stamp, and this is going to help to ground the scene a little bit. And it will also give us a base for us to put our wildflowers that we're going to be stamping on. And I'm also going to ground the fence a little bit with them. Okay, and then the other side, I'm going to ground these trees. And then add the grass. And you could probably leave stamping out in the background out if you wanted to, but I wouldn't leave out the outline to the side of the road because that helps define where the road is. And then we also want to add quite a bit of grass to this median. And we may even want to add a little bit more green color to it just in general. So I'm going to take a little Q-tip and I'm just going to add some of the garden green to this to give it a little more green. And I want to also add a little bit of beige into this, so I have some Sahara sand Stampin' Up, and I'll just use the clean side of my Q-tip on the Sahara sand, and then I'm going to just add some of this to get a brownish type of value to this medium. Also, the bottom of some of these, to ground some of the grass here, I'll also just put a little bit of the Sahara sand along the bottom to help ground. And kind of smooth it out so it's not quite such a harsh line. And to give a little bit of brown in all this. And do a little bit on this side too. To okay, and we'll leave that to dry for a bit. Okay, now I want to maybe lighten things up a little bit, so I'm going to use some Hero Arts Unicorn White pigment ink, and I'm just going to use a clean Q-tip and just get a little bit, and then just kind of along the edge here. Maybe put a little bit of a highlight. And it will kind of mix with the green. And so it will help lighten the green a bit. I don't want to contaminate my, get another Q-tip because I don't want to get green in my stamp pad. So I'm kind of twisting this so that I don't contaminate my stamp pad with the green. And just kind of lightening the color a little bit. The same over here. Highlight where the gully rises up and kind of evens out. There would probably be a little bit of a highlight. And so it's just kind of lightening things just a smidge. Okay, now I want to take my BG3, which is the second lightest, and I want to come back in here and add some more swipes. And then I'm going to take my colorless blender, if I can find it, and just kind of smooth it down. Okay, now I'm going to take the BG5. This isn't the darkest one, but it's the next to the darkest one. And I'm just going to lightly, very lightly touch at the edge of the road here. Take our colorless blender and just kind of blend it out. Get it good and saturated. When we get everything saturated, we're kind of getting these forced ruts in the road. And I just filled my colorless blender, and so it is oozing with liquid because it was a little dry. And then I'm just going to dab it dry here. Okay, going to get my garden green again, my little stamp, and I'm going to add my grass back in because I had lightened this median, and so I want to get more grass. Okay, I'm going to take my bigger grass. This is the Art Impressions grass again, but you could probably use the one that comes with some of the Stampscapes sets. There's a kind of a largish grass that comes with one of them. I don't remember which one it is, but I'm just using the Art Impressions one. And putting the big grass at the bottom, I'm going to clean my grasses. Now to add a little more of this Sahara sand color to the background, I'm going to take my small grass and I'm just going to do a few little stamps in this color in the grass. Not very many, but just a little, just to add a little bit of this color to the background. Okay. Now I like to add flowers to my compositions, and one of my favorite flower colors is a Marvy La Plume 2 marker, and it's number 55 Iris Purple. So what I'm going to do, the bigger flower set, I am going to ink up the flowers with the number 55 and the stems with the number 15. It's the Le Plume 2 number 15 olive green. And so I'm going to stamp these at the bottom. And just like that. And the smaller flower, I am just going to ink up the flowers themselves and not the stems, and then just randomly scatter it where I stamped the grass before. And so wherever I stamp the grass, I can put some of these little flowers. And another good color for the flowers is the number 8, which is violet. And so we'll do some flowers that are violet just to have a change. And we'll maybe do one right here at the edge. And I think maybe the last thing I'm going to do here, okay, I have some Stampin' Up! Smoky Slate here, and I'm going to use my brown brush, and then I'm just going to brush a little bit of the smoky slate onto the road. And then I'm going to take another Q-tip, add a little bit of smoky slate, and I am going to add some shadows with the smoky slate. Like under these trees, underneath the fence, the grass on the other side of the fence would probably be darker, so I'll add a little bit of smoky slate there, and a little bit under here. Maybe some down here at the bottom. And let's see, when I put the smoky slate on the road, I should have put that on before I did the flowers. It looks like it smeared some of the flowers here. So let me get this and just kind of blot this up. And we lost some of the definition here too, so I'm going to get my BG5 and add a little bit of the definition back in here. Maybe a couple of swipes here. And get my colorless blender and just kind of blend that in. As you can see, we're getting really saturated here, and so okay, give that a little bit chance to dry. And then I want to add my flowers back in. So I'm going to use the number 55. If that flower would stay on there, it would be nice. And I'm going to just stamp a few here again, so that get a little more definition, and probably also need to do the grass underneath those flowers that were smeared. So I'm going to get my garden green and my little grass and just stamp it back in. Out of the way, and I'm going to take my lightest BG1 and just kind of run that along the edge here, trying to get some definition at the edge back without making it too terribly dark. Okay, and I'm going to do one final swipe with this down the road. And I think I'm going to take my darkest blue and get my blue blending brush. And I want to just make these edges just a tad bit darker. And also in here it's a little bit too light, and so I'm going to bring some of that blue into there, and then along the top. And let's say that's just about done. I can take a highlighting pen here, one of my Uniballs, and I can add some dots of white here and maybe some highlights along the roof line and along the fence. Maybe some dots down in here. And also on these dark fence posts, maybe a little bit. Let's see, not this one, I don't like it here, so let me scratch that off and put it more along the edge. Okay, and there we have it. And I sometimes like to sign my finished projects. Which one did I grab? I grabbed the 0.3. I want the 0.3. Sign and date it. And another project completed. Thanks for watching.